welcome to another Leadership Journey video segment. I am your host, Kit Allowitz. Today I'd like to talk about the topic entitled The Idea of Interfunctionality Within the Bigger Scope of Institutionalization. We as an organization are on the stalwart march to try to figure out what is institutionalization and how do we do it and how do we get there. We continue to learn little important insights along our journey that are most likely necessary if we are going to get serious about institutionalization on our path or our goal towards preeminence. I want to offer to you today another short insight about what you and I should be visualizing and thinking about if we're going to see this bad boy through. Now, it's not rocket science, but I need you to hang in with me for just a minute or two. Right now, you and I are on a functional team, and we have been asked individually and at a functional level to try to figure out what is our functional group's obligation to drive principles into and deep into our organization, into our culture. At the organizational level, we described this as cross-functional or horizontal collaboration and hierarchical or vertical alignment. Now, it's a whole bunch of words pressed together, but they have a very important meaning for you and I to get to the far side of if we're really going to ensure that we are thinking about our collective obligation. So let me talk more about that. So here's the insight. Not only are you and I on a functional team or group, but we are also part of a interfunctional group or groups. So what's the definition of interfunctional? Interfunctional group is a group within the functional group. Now, this isn't rocket science, but let me give you an example. I am in the functional group Human Resources. However, I am also part of an interfunctional group called Training and Development. Let me give you a visual of this. If you would picture a large organizational triangle, and this triangle represents the entire North American Anderson-Hauser organization. It's essentially an organizational chart. However, contained within that large organizational triangle are smaller organizational triangles that represent the business units or functions. Now, this isn't rocket science either. Here's the insight. Within the smaller organizational triangles, there are even smaller organizational triangles. These represent the hierarchical or departments and or functional, interfunctional groups that I'm trying to describe. I'm suggesting to you that the same challenges that exist at the big organization and then the mid-sized triangles also exist within these smaller triangles that I'm trying to describe to you. Functional groups, such as HR, they contain these interfunctional groups like training and development that I'm part of. And here's another insight. They cannot effectively collaborate cross-functionally unless they institutionalize interfunctionally. A functional triangle is simply a smaller version of the organizational triangle. A functional triangle has vertical and horizontal silos just like the larger organization it does. If a function is dysfunctional, it will not be able to engage in cross-functional, enterprise-wide institutionalization. The term we use to describe interfunctional institutionalization is called harmonization, and the term we use to describe cross-functional institutionalization is called homogenization. Shockingly, and this is the crazy part, it is estimated that some 75+% of functional groups are dysfunctional, which means they suffer from internal fragmentation, polarization, or even things like competition. Is it any wonder then that enterprise-wide institutionalization is so rare? And yet we at Anderson-Hauser, we want to get there. However, we will not be successful at organizational-wide institutionalization if we don't also harmonize interfunctionally by thinking and engaging with our groups and answering this question. What is our obligation to institutionalize principles hierarchical and cross-departmentally within our function? Now, back to my earlier example, the training group. We need to engage and interact with the rest of the units within Human Resources, for example, and discuss this and figure it out and work through it together. On top of that, I and we must be engaging other functional groups within our enterprise and talking about our collective obligation to drive principles within the culture. We and I and us, we must all do this. As we drive more principally based action within our culture, we will prevent problems and we will shift our culture towards the elements of preeminence that we are still in search of. You are responsible for this. I am responsible for this. We are obligated to do this. So, get there. This is my challenge to you. Manager or not, have these quadrant 2 conversations, right? They're important, but they're not urgent, so they're always at the whim of not being done. Have these conversations and towards our obligation. Don't be lame and get entirely lost in the chaos. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.